Hopefully we're on. Yeah, here we are. All right. Welcome to Friday, everybody. I've been on a bit of a Friday live streaming hiatus. Let me make sure my sound is on, as that is one of my Achilles heels here. It looks like we have sound. So if we don't, then the tech is lying to me. All right. So I am working on a commission currently of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which I've decided that they were going to be bikers for some reason. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that. And I've been wanting to do some paintings of bikers kind of stuff, even though I'm not a biker. I might have been conceived on a bike. My dad was a Harley guy back in his younger days, and he's still a Harley guy. He has a bike. And so I grew up around motorcycles and, somewhat. And I've never really done paintings of them, which I think fits in with kind of some of the stuff I do. So here I am. And so I got this commission, and I like the idea of making them into bikers. There's some things that are going to be kind of hard to translate, so I'm not sure how much. Like, there's a lot of detail that goes into each of the characters, and so some of it is like pretty specific, like the red horseman, carries a sword, that sort of thing, and the white horseman has a bow and arrow. The black one is supposed to be carrying scales, and then the white one is just represents death, or the pale, not the white, the pale rider. So I'm going to be working on the black rider today, and in my interpretation of that, so they talk about the scales, and biblically, if you're going to the biblical account of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and I'm going to try to explain this in the way I understand it. Like, I'm not a scholar, not a religious guy, not in a traditional sense so much. So this isn't necessarily like a painting, like, because it's not like what I'm trying to say is it's not a Bible story I'm telling you, although it is a story in the Bible. Anyways, where was I going? So anyway, yeah, the Black Rider, he carries scales, and biblically it's referencing the weight of bread, I think, and the weight of something else, and it was equal to what was approximately a day's wages. So the fact that you have that, and then the other side of it was that the prices, that would be the prices for a day's for stuff you need to eat and survive, and then the prices on oil and wine would not be touched, and that can be viewed as the people who consume oil and wine aren't affected by the changes in prices of things, and or as much. So I saw it more as sort of a, rather than a scale of, like, it could be like it was it was it was a carrying scales on the bike didn't really make sense. So I was trying to figure out what else could I do to make it a little bit more modern, maybe. And I'm going to do it with chains, holding chains. I feel like that story is more talking about sort of the bind we're in financially and globally and socially, possibly economically. It's like it more or less represented a lot of the unbalance and unfairness. Not I guess fair is a loaded word. It's the imbalance of power in our societies, and to me that made sense in the context of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I think when things get, there's always, I think, going to be a structure of people who have more and people who have less. I don't think that is in and of itself the problem that arises in the apocalypse. It's this extreme difference of people who have to work and toil all day long just to have a necessity, and sometimes they can't even afford that. And then at the same time, we have people flying themselves to space because they won the internet. You know that's when I think when a society gets that imbalanced, and it it is a sign that things are about to unravel. And I think like the four horsemen of the apocalypse is like the apocalypse is kind of a funny word, but this is more of like in my mind referencing uh, societal unraveling and melting down. And I don't think the apocalypse is some, you can think of, I mean, maybe there's two different types of apocalypses. Maybe it's um, one version is one that happens to the entire planet, like we get hit by an asteroid and everything dies, or the sun envelops the earth way faster than we thought it was going to, and it burns all of it, all evidence of life ever even existing off the face of the planet. That's one kind of apocalypse, just like total apocalypse. I think the other one we mostly think of, at least when I'm thinking about these things, I'm thinking about the apocalypse in terms of the human apocalypse. Like, how is it affecting us? Like, what's bad for us may not necessarily be bad for a lot of other things that are on this planet. And, like vice versa. Like, well, maybe it will. Maybe, maybe it's good for us to be here in a lot of senses. Anyways, that's another train of thought. Um, so, yeah. So for the Black Rider, I think of this as more of a I think I'm going to use change rather than scales. Scales just didn't make sense for the way I've decided. I'm not taking this as a literal depiction of how it's told biblically or in other stories. I'm kind of taking my own spin on it here. So I think that gives me the leeway to kind of like add a few other extra touches. So I'm going to use chains on this guy. Although on the other character, I do have him holding a sword and then a bow. I think those things kind of cool. Um, I kind of want to have this guy so his chains are dragging off the ground and creating sparks. And although I've got the sword laid in here for this character, I'm probably going to I might make that bigger, just more menacing. It's right now at this stage of the painting, I'm mostly just blocking in stuff, making sure everything's kind of in the right spot, and so what's not going on yet is this atmosphere that I haven't figured out quite yet. So I'm going to block all the characters in, kind of model them out a little bit, and then I might end up going over a lot of the painting and obscuring things and changing the details around or obscuring them. But I kind of want to know where everything is, and then I can figure out where I want this focus to be for the viewer inside this. And on top of that, right now, this is just kind of fun, just pushing and pulling things around. Um, yeah, yeah. So I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I finally getting around to it. It's a little long overdue, I think. This commission's been sitting on my table for a bit, but there was some things I had to figure out how to set up. Like I had to figure out like how was I going to compose this, and then this commission I received before pandemic started, and so I met a guy at one of the brewery art walks here at the brewery where my studio is, and he was a biker guy, and is part of a motorcycle club. here in town, and well, it's all over the place, but he was like in charge of it here in the LA area, or not in LA, but San Fernando Valley. And uh, so I started hanging out with him and talking about bikes and wanting to do this painting, and he had some other ideas. You know, he had some art that he was thinking about doing. The funny thing, he isn't the one that commissioned this painting, but I've been wanting to do paintings of bikers and motorcycles. And I think this guy, he approached me to see if I was interested in the subject matter. And at that point, I had this commission, so it kind of like lined up as far as like I had an interest in something, and then I received a commission, and so now I had a good reason to really pursue working on this project of some sort. And so I was hanging out with him, and I think we were talking about setting up reference for this painting, but it was hard for me to figure out how to structure this idea. I don't have bikes. I'm not around them a lot. So I went on a road trip with this motorcycle club up to Sacramento. It was a big thing going on up there, and he invited me to sort of. I drove my car behind, and got a feel for what it was like to be at a big event with a club. You had to be a member to be in the club, and so yeah, it was fun. But still, it's like it's the one thing that's difficult to make paintings about it, for me anyway, is when I don't have any frame of reference. I don't have something that helps me become familiar with the subject matter. Like when I'm doing paintings of Wild West outlaws and stuff like that, it's not like I'm around Wild West stuff, but I grew up around that culture, and a lot of the things that I'm painting are more cultural attitudes and ways of frames of mind, I think, that are indicative of how I was brought up, or the environment that I was raised in. So I'm reflecting a lot of that. Um, so yeah, even though my dad had motorcycles when I was a kid, like I didn't have a lot of relationship to it. So wanting to be around it and get to know, more familiar with it. Well, so long story short, or long story for at least about another hour or another 30 minutes. um, the pandemic started, and I didn't have access to getting references for the work I was wanting to do, like not just this painting, but any painting that I'm working on. I generally let's see, I get people to pose and model for things. Get props that I might need, costuming for the models, and I will use that as reference, and I'll take photographs of them in poses based on ideas I have in my sketchbook, etc. And um, yeah, so that would be the way I would stage it, and then create references from all those like props and wardrobe and stuff, and then take those references as ways to go forward with the painting. I'd start the painting, and then I use those references for information about how drapery folds and all that kind of stuff, and so now I had to, so during the pandemic, what I did is I didn't have access to both either models or a lot of the props I wanted. So I started turning towards 3D digital modeling, trying to learn that too. And I wanted to make paintings of trains. And so I started to learn how to make models and find models of trains that you could download online and start staging them with lighting and environment and all this different stuff. And it got to be pretty fascinating stuff, actually. And the exciting thing was is that it got around another limitation that I had and visualizing the setup for the paintings was, so say I'm doing a painting of a train, if I wanna, and when I've done that before, I've gone, uh, and ridden on steam trains. I went up to Carson City. You can ride a steam train from Carson City to Virginia City, and, you can get a flavor for what the trains are actually like. You can walk all around them and take photos to understand how everything's fitting together and how everything works and the wheels, and yeah, you can do some really cool stuff. But one of the limitations I have is that, uh, if I want to set up some sort of special lighting situation, I'm kind of SOL. Like, there's no way to that I know of to to do it with an actual train. You have to be able to shut off all the other lights around it. So you'd have, you're either stuck with whatever daylight conditions you have, or you have to set it up so that you can shoot the references, shoot photos of the piece of the train the way you want to see it. And so you'd have to probably do it at night, set up lights, and people who have steam trains probably don't want you hanging around there and commandeering their train to do stupid stuff like that. So, I guess the short of it is I was kind of limited by whatever lighting was available when I was looking at a train in person. But with the 3D modeling, I quickly discovered that that limitation was gone. I could light the train up in any situation I wanted to at nighttime with other lights, with lights coming out from underneath of it, like it was on fire, like all kinds of stuff. And it really um, kind of changed the way I can visualize making some of these paintings. So that looks kind of funny. So this is how I've approached this painting, is by creating a whole model that I use for reference. And it's taken a lot of time to learn how to do that, but it makes the painting come together, I think, so much more clear. One, because by making those models, you become very familiar with everything that's in the work. So, like, um, you get very familiar with the bikes, the characters, and you know what everything is pretty intimately. I'm just playing around right here. Figure out how to do this. So yeah, it's been a very interesting and helpful tool. Let's see. So one of the things I've learned, and it's not that I've learned it just by going through this sort of newer process, um, is that things are done in a sequence, and if you try to jump those sequences, you end up having headaches for yourself, and you can't figure out why things aren't working. And so, like I think one of the side benefits I've gained through all this experimentation is that I started really thinking about what sequence of events happen first in the production of any sort of artwork or anything that you're trying to do. Like, it's almost better to take your time and slow things down and go in the right order than it is like so. Like, I guess my example is that you don't want to like start with a logo or like in terms of making artwork. I think there's a rush sometimes, or it feels like you just want to jump to the painting and the cool details. Like you just want to get to the finish line quick. But what I've been trying to do is slow what I'm doing down and not slow, and what I think I've started to figure out is that doing that actually makes the paintings go quicker because I'm not having to go back and fix things well, I guess that's maybe not the right way to put it. I feel like the efficiency of the way trying to work more efficiently in what I'm doing allows me to be more productive with less time. So although I might spend less time actually doing something, I actually get more done on it. There's no reason to like you don't have to work quickly. Like that's not like um important. Like making something quickly doesn't make it um better. But if you can work more efficiently, more quickly, you can um make more paintings if you want. You can get to those details quickly, quicker. A lot of details is another side subject. Like, um, probably more important to know what to leave out as it is to put more stuff in. Like, the less is more sort of thing is pretty true. Less is more. I feel like when I getting too detailed in a painting, um, sometimes it's because the painting isn't holding up on its own some other way. Like I'm trying to make up for something, like it's missing something, so I add more detail. And more detail is rarely the problem that the painting has. Usually, it's been more often that the painting has too much detail, and it needs to be clean, like simplified. Having something simplified down. Um, like when I'm looking at artwork, what I think is important for me to try to understand is like, does the painting look like it was fun to make? And sometimes I might not like the artwork that somebody has or they're doing it, but I recognize that it looks like it was fun to make, and I can appreciate that in anybody's work, I think. So like having some sort of um, masterpiece that you toiled over for years, like, and you're like, but look how hard I worked on it. It's like, but if it wasn't fun to make, why would you even do it? Because people like to suffer sometimes. This notion that like artists have to suffer to guess what? Like they don't. That's not. I don't buy into that. I mean, everybody suffers, right? Everybody has their own. Everybody has their own suffering that they're subjected to, but it's not like a prerequisite for being an artist. I mean, I guess if it is, you already met it just by being here. Like being an artist is basically making the best of a bad situation. And then making that bad situation as pleasant as possible. So I'm doing all this weighing in of stuff, and it may be obscured later in the painting altogether. I'm not quite sure yet. Guess we'll see. I'm still trying to figure out like how much, like if I want to. I have these all laid out as skeletons just for now. I might end up changing that later. Don't know yet. Just one of the things I was getting at is like um, to do things in sequence, you have to be a couple. There has to be a couple things going on. More outside of just knowing the proper sequence. So that's probably the first thing, like knowing the order in which to start attacking a problem, or a creative problem like a painting or something, like knowing where to begin. And then I think on top of that, once you understand where to begin, having the discipline not to jump the line, not to jump ahead of things. Like that's, I think, the next struggle in any creative thing is to not jump ahead of yourself. And I guess you could chalk that up to having some sort of discipline, or maybe learning to be patient, even though it might be hard because you have deadlines and all kinds of other things going on. Change the view. Yeah. And yeah, so all these things I'm talking about, like I've done the wrong way. Well, It's just not wrong. Guess you could call it wrong. I did it the other way than which I'm talking about now. We'll put it that way. And since I've taken the time to slow down and even in my own process, realize if I take things in a proper sequence, then I have better results. So I've had to like really think about how I'm approaching work and think about doing it in ways that are more efficient so that um, there's a sort of there's a certain amount of joy that's made just in making anything. But what I find more satisfying is that what I don't like doing is getting a lot of time into something and realizing I don't like it. And you can always just start something differently. That's not a problem. But I I, I don't I don't want to have that problem. So I want to have like everything I work on. I want it to be as fun as I can do it. I have on like it's satisfying at every stage. It isn't like um, go through these stages of like I can't like I don't like it. Like there's a lot of times where you're working on something and you're just like it's not working and just frustrating, and eventually you pull it around to something that's cool or that you're happy with. But um, maybe there's no way of avoiding that. Maybe this is all a fool's errand, but I think I like doing things in newer ways to at least from like keeps me entertained in the making of the paintings. Something like that. His scarecrow is going to be going behind his back over here at some point. So, there's maybe a lot of pressure in our society to be doing more and more and more and quicker and faster and better than it was before. But I feel like that is mostly a waste of energy. More, 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 like all the time. It leads to being burned out mostly. So my approach, I think, generally is changing to um, not more, at least make it each one better. That's possible. Like really focusing on the craft of making the painting. That doesn't necessarily make the painting better, but um, you know, I feel like it's hard to say if it's like raising the bar or something. I don't know if that's really that possible, but it's an exploration of trying it a different way to see if you like the results, I guess. So I might find that after looking back on a lot of doing work in a different sort of process or a changed process, that it doesn't really add anything that valuable to the paintings. It actually might make them a little more stiff or boring. So I think there's always a constant exploration of how to go about doing these things. And so I guess in the short of it, that's kind of what I'm describing, is just taking a slightly different approach to the process. And so far, I think it's helped to um, make the paintings the frustrating. There's certain frustrations in making paintings, and it's sort of alleviating some of those frustrations a bit. The things that were like would have maybe been more difficult to deal with in the past aren't as hard to sort of approach in the production or make the making of the painting. Like I'm doing all this work at this point, but I might obscure a lot of this stuff in smoke and flames and who knows what. But what I'm working at right here is to have everything that has form and structure that might be important in the painting be sort of laid in, so I know where everything is at, and then I can decide um, if it's important to leave in. Like what's important to leave in is the things that you want people to pay attention to, and you want to leave room for people's imagination to fill in the blanks. So yeah, this is kind of fun. Yeah, EAS approved. Thanks, Chet. I think my biggest struggle is patience, anyways, with paintings. I like to. I'm describing all the stuff. I say people are we, but I really am talking about me. I think I like to rush to the to the cool stuff so much that often I just try to start out there, and that might be a good way of doing it. But I guess I'm trying to figure out if it's not the best way to do things, because there are definitely cons to doing that. You can. Oops. Uh, Maybe I think hmm. If there's anyone out there that has questions about art production and making and anything, let me know in the comments. And if I remember to get back to them, when I do another stream, I'll answer those things. Dark art, huh? All art is dark art to some degree. I like to think of mine as, oh, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like doing this process with having sort of a 3D stage model set that I created to use for references. Um, it's created a lot more preparatory work, which I think I've been avoiding in a lot of my paintings. I think the process that I've been avoiding, and not necessarily in the making of the painting, is um, doing more preparatory work for each one. And so, while that might result in fewer paintings, I think that the paintings that are produced will end up being better paintings. So, like early on in my career, I quit doing like lots of detailed drawings and studies because I felt like what was happening was the interest in the early studies was getting lost and not translated into the final painting. So I started just jumping to the final paintings, and that does hold up. I think the energy in the paintings became much better. But I think throwing out the idea of doing preparatory work altogether is also not the greatest. So the trick is to a combination, I think, is where I'm leaning towards, where I do a lot of preparatory work, but I still, on the final piece, redo the entire thing. I don't transfer a drawing or a sketch or something like that. I just do it on the painting. I think that's probably where I'm headed with all this. And so the hardest part for me so far has been to not, so I started the painting and then I go back to create reference and I kind of going back and forth, which right now is kind of fun, but it's been difficult to not just jump ahead to to the finish. Just um, so yeah, I've been working on just keeping patient with how I'm doing this. Yeah, more prep work does lead to it leads to having to go back and fix things because you didn't prepare for or anticipate challenges that would come up in the painting, and it prevents from having to search for solutions as much, like, or search for, like, I don't know. It also might help to weed out ideas that seem good at first, but then don't seem that good, like, but don't hold up as much as you kind of go through the process of producing the work. Yeah, mostly aiming to have fun when I'm doing this, because if it's not fun, who wants to do it? Well, what I guess what I mean is, like, um, goes back to, if the paintings that look like they were fun to make, they're fun to make, that hopefully they're fun to look at. And if they're fun to look at, then you'll want to look at them. And if you don't want to look at them, why would anybody else? Like, some of this bike got this green color to it, but there's a light that's sort of yellowish in this painting, and so that's carrying over into this bike. So hopefully that's going to read as a black bike. Hey, Chris, speak of the devil. Yeah, so I'm going through and just laying in more. So I blocked the characters in loosely, and I'm going in and just taking that another step, I think. And then hopefully the next step will be going in and working on the sort of atmosphere all this exists in, making sure everything is kind of lining up correctly. I guess he's not riding that. The bike isn't a phantom black bike. Like that color that doesn't reflect any light whatsoever. That'd be pretty trippy if it was just like a black hole in the middle of the painting. Let's see. Oh, I'm going off the canvas. I should mint this one. Mint. Minty fresh. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up here in a little bit for the live stream. Actually, I have that wrong spot. Yeah. That is too light. All right, so about to sign off here. Like, yeah, all right, I'll do a wide shot. All right, so there it is. So far. Out of the way here. There we go. All right, I will keep working on this and we'll try to get back in the habit of doing these streams on Fridays. Although, like the next couple Fridays, or like Christmas time or something. I don't know. Thanks for all the comments, guys. Chat. Appreciate it. I will catch you guys later.